right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports, and you can watch the show on Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds Show. A lot going on in the world of the NFL and the SEC for that matter. This segment is brought to you by Sound and Communications, the leading edge audio visual for churches, business, and sports facilities. SoundcomAV.com, Sound and Communications. We welcome in Mike Detillier on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Mike D with WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Mike, what do you think about what's going on with the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll? Paul Allen passes away. It looked like Pete Carroll went for a little bit of a power move and maybe had too much say-so, so to speak, in shopping for the groceries, as Bill Parcells would have said. And where do you think that is going in Seattle right now?
It's not going good. And you don't know what Paul's sister and how she feels about it. Because, she's admitted in interviews she's really not a sports person. So it's the people around her that are whispering in her ear. And most of the time that's going to be about, you got to get rid of Pete. That maybe he's done his work here and move on. And do they do a total rebuild and getting rid of Pete Carroll and trading off Russell Wilson? Well, they can still get a pretty big bounty for him at this stage. So I think that's the big question mark. And I've talked to a lot of different people in the NFL about it, and they all feel that, hey, it's not so much Allen's sister, but the people around her. That's the unknown. Who's giving her advice on what to do with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks? And it's obvious in that division, too, you better make a strong move because of what the Rams have. The Cardinals were on quite a run until they started derailed, and what's happening in San Francisco. That it's got to be a strong move on her part, and I kind of got a feeling that Pete's not going to be a part of any sort of rebuild. He's had his opportunity,
sure,
and him and Snyder, I think, did a great job. But the talent evaluation part, name me the last really big time draft choice that they've hit on, and certainly DK.
Yeah,
has been the one guy that really stands out. But other than that, you gotta have to think a little bit here about that. And so, and Pete should know that because of his connections in college football, really should. And yet they've had some of the weirdest first-round picks and second-round picks you could possibly imagine. And then what he gave up for Jamal, who's a really good player. But he gave up a lot for a safety. A lot.
All right. That'll be interesting. So do you think this is it for both Pete and Russell Wilson in Seattle this year?
Yeah, I think the marriage, I was surprised it came back another year because that was some friction there. But, I think Pete and Russ, I think, kind of said, hey, listen, let's just try to make this work. And I think Russ came back a little bit too quick from the hand injury, and it affected his play. So I think Wilson's gone for sure. I think he realizes that they got to move on. And at his age, and he saw what happened with Stafford getting traded from Detroit to L.A., I think he wants out. And so if I'm the Saints, I try to put some pieces in place here. Try to make that move for Russell Wilson. I think he'd be a great fit in Sean Payton's offense.
Yes.
Defensively, you've got the building blocks of what you want to go with. But if you don't get a guy to turn the engine over on the car, you stuck in neutral. You just stuck there. And I think that they got to make a move there. And if Russ is available, I do what I got to do to bring him in.
No doubt. Mike Detillier, Saints Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, NFL Insider. He joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Can you imagine? I mean, the Saints with Russell Wilson as good as Sean Payton is and that staff. Wow, Mike. I
Well,
mean,
they better get Russ some help at receiver. That's the other part of this. And I think last year, just because of the salary cap implications and what happened money wise, you had to make some moves you really didn't want to, but you had to. This year, financially, you'll be in a little bit better shape. Now you're going to have to make some tough decisions here on what do you do long term with a Cam Jordan, a Teron Armstead. If you don't pay Marcus Davenport, someone else will. I mean, Marcus is a monster player when he's healthy. Big question mark is availability. But if you think Trey Hendrickson got a nice deal last year, the one Davenport will sign, either with the Saints or someone else, is going to be even bigger than that. So there's some major decisions to be made. But you got to upgrade the quarterback and wide receiver positions. If not, you're not winning anything. Because you can just go so far with defense and special teams.
right.
And Kamara, because really that's the other piece of the puzzle.
Well, yeah. Ask Georgia at the college level as far as the whole quarterback thing. So, Demario Davis. I mean, the guy's turned into a star linebacker, right? I mean, nobody really was talking about him at the Jets, but it's the Jets. And is it? I get that Demario's an amazing player. He's from here, as you know. And what is it? A combination of Dennis Allen is also that good, Mike? What is it? As far as
I think with Demario, it was just finding the right spot.
okay.
And you're right. He had some good seasons with the Jets, but he bounced around this league. Jets, Cleveland Jets, and then all of a sudden he comes to the Saints, and he's able to take it to another level. They put him in the right position to make plays. He's a great leader. He's smart. Ryan Nielsen, the Saints defensive line coach, made the comment to me is like he gets it before the play's even called. That's how smart he is as a player. He sort of gets what an offense is going to try to do before it even happens. And athletically, man, his ability to run the field is terrific.
Incredible.
For his age. He's over 30 years old. And that's the rarity. Name me another guy in his late 20s or 30 became the star player on defense.
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen much. And he's done it multiple seasons.
He's 32. It's incredible, Mike.
And so the other thing, too, is, sometimes God bless you with good health. And he's been relatively healthy here. And that sometimes has a lot to say about your production. And the one thing about a player, and I'll never forget the great Jimmy Taylor told me this years ago, because when the Saints brought in Adrian Peterson, he was reading all these guys who were writing, in the newspaper and all about Adrian Peterson and how great he was as a player, and he had drank out of the fountain of youth. And I remember Jimmy called me and said, Mike, that can't be. And I said, Jimmy, I agree with you. That was they were taking the wash out real early in the morning on that about Adrian, because he had been a great player, but he wasn't quite the same. I don't care what type of shape you're in. And Jimmy had told me, he said, Mike, when I got traded from Green Bay to the Saints in '67, I'd gotten in the best shape of my life. But Father Time had taken away the one element that tells you it's close, consistency. To be able to do it week in, week out. And he said, man, when I was with the Packers in the 60s all the way up to 65, I could do it week in, week out, and it was, it wasn't a real chore. But it really became a chore for me in '66 with the Packers. I got hurt, and then it really became a chore in '67. He said, so I don't care how good a shape you're in, it kind of the man upstairs takes away the consistency level before you start to break down. And I think Jimmy was absolutely right. That part is amazing with Demario Davis today. The consistency from game to game to game to be a playmaker at the highest level. And so, Father Time hasn't touched him yet.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you see it with other guys. And you wonder a little bit about Cam, who had a great game against Tampa. But there are games where his ability, he's always been really good against the run. It's the pass rush situation. And maybe that hand is on his shoulder, that consistency level to do it game in, game out like he used to.
Mm. But you are, what, 100% confident, 95%? Where are you as far as thinking that the Saints will go all in and try to land a free agent QB?
I'm about as confident as I could be. I mean, come on, you can't take a look at what you have at quarterback from start to finish and say, I'm satisfied with that. Even when Winston was healthy, that inconsistent part of the game was there. You're not winning nothing in this league unless you got a star quarterback. Nothing. And I think Sean fully understands that today, more than he did a year ago. Because you know what? You can convince yourself that I can mentor that guy to be a great player. He's got the athletic skills. He's got the talent. I can mentor him to the next level. Not quite. So I think he gets it today, that he doesn't have that guy on the roster.
So Roethlisberger's out. Russell Wilson will be on the move. We think Aaron Rodgers will be on the move. I guess we think Deshaun Watson will get his stuff cleaned up and be on the move.
And I think Carr out in Las Vegas.
Ooh,
he would be
Carr and Sean would be good too.
He would be the back burner guy, I think, for the Saints. If they couldn't do a deal for Russell Wilson, and a couple things in there, he's early 30s. The relationship between John Gruden and Sean Payton, they've known each other for a long time. And when Gruden was out of coaching, a lot of times, he was at Saints camp. And so, that's just one phone call away. And I think Carr's a really good player. I think he's saddled with a team that isn't real good around him. But I think he's another guy that if you're going to do a rebuild in Las Vegas, which looks to be the case, that he may be moving too.
That'd be incredible if they could land either Russell Wilson or Derek Carr for the New Orleans Saints. Wow. Especially considering the Saints team and what they can do without a quarterback. He is Mike Detillier, NFL insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans on the Out of Bounds show, brought to you by Sound and Communications, soundcomav.com. All right, Mike, when you look at where the NFC is today, some people are going to have bad weeks, right? New Orleans did a great job against Brady and Tampa Bay. Somehow the Detroit Lions smoked the Arizona Cardinals. Where are you right now? Did that totally change, like, your power rankings, or do you chalk that up as you're going to have some bad Sundays in the NFL?
Well, everybody's got bad Sundays in the NFL eventually. But, the Rams still got to convince me that they can be an elite team. And I think the two teams that finished it in Green Bay last year may well finish it again, and that being Green Bay and Tampa Bay. Because, Tampa's defense is really good, really good. I mean, come on, you hold somebody to 9 points and no touchdown, man, you should win a game. But your offense was El Stinko Sunday night. That's not going to happen week in, week out. That's not going to happen week in, week out. So I think those two teams that finished it a year ago in the NFC will be there again.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, Mike, you've been in the NFL since the 80s, and you've had all these people come through camps and the Saints and assistant coaches become this, that, and the other. So I'm reading the book by Seth Wickersham. It's Better to Be Feared, on the New England Patriots dynasty, and obviously the focal point is on Brady, Belichick, and Kraft. And you've been around pro ball, and you know how there's friction and ego and ambition, and if you can get just the right mix, you can make it happen. We talked to you for a couple of years about how, Sean's got a big personality, and he sucks the oxygen out of the room, but that Mickey and Drew were able to know their role, and everybody was able to operate at a high level. As I'm reading this book on Brady, Belichick, and Kraft, Kraft was kind of Switzerland to those two guys, if you will, Mike. It's fascinating to me that Brady was able to stay around that. I know they were winning, and that was why he did. But stay around that long. But he always craved Belichick to tell him, hey, you're doing a great job. And Belichick just wasn't going to share any of that with Brady. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with that, and it's almost like you come from a family and you're successful, and maybe you kind of crave that adoration of mom and dad. You want to hear mom and dad say it, and he couldn't get dad to say it. He just couldn't. Belichick wasn't going to go that route, and didn't realize those two together really were something special. And that could have easily been done on Belichick's part, easily. But egos do get involved. That's the one thing, and I think Jeff Duncan wrote it in his book along with Mike Neighbors' new book on Drew Brees, of how well Drew and Sean got along. And Drew always gave Sean a lot of compliments, and Sean did it right back to Drew. It was a different relationship, totally, than Belichick-Brady, totally, in which both of them together worked as a team. And yet you saw, despite the ability to work together, that craving of Brady to want to hear it from the guy, to almost hear it from his football dad, that, hey, I always got your back, man. You're the best ever. And Belichick wouldn't go down that road. So egos happen. And my former neighbor, he passed away during the summer, Joe Clark. He would always talk about a kind of a friction situation when he was with the Cleveland Browns, with Paul Brown and Otto Graham.
Oh, wow.
And he said, back then, listen, my dad died in 2014. You couldn't convince him any different that Otto Graham wasn't the greatest quarterback of all time. And he got some championships to kind of back that up. But, Joe was there as a backup, and he said Paul wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. And he thought that had he done it, Graham would have played a few more years in the NFL. But Graham had got enough of him. He had got enough of it. And he says, you go back, he was there when Jim Brown decides, man, I'm going to do movies. I'm not coming back and playing in the NFL. I'm making more money and, doing this Hollywood stuff.
Absolutely.
And he said it became the ego at that point. And he said that wasn't the head coach. It wasn't the head coach, Blanton Collier, at that time. Art Modell had bought the Browns. And it was Art's decision. And he became the ego guy. And Jim had a pretty healthy one. And Jim still does today. God bless him. But he said, it goes to show you those type special players. If it's an Otto Graham, if it's a Jim Brown, you better treat them differently than everybody else, because you know what you got in those guys. And he said, Jim, because Joe got to talk to him later, Jim was like, hey, Joe, man, I miss football, but I don't miss that paycheck. It's a lot better in Hollywood. Now you're getting beat up.
Oh, man.
And so I think what you're trying to say is correct, that the egos do get involved in all this. I don't think there's any question about it. And look what's happening in Green Bay.
Oh.
The ego between the
and you don't have an owner.
And Aaron Rodgers, and Murphy is sort of, I'm staying out of this. He's completely out of it. You would think as a former player and a big part of the NFLPA at one time that you would have some stroke in this. He ain't got nothing. This is between the GM and Aaron, and both of them are not giving in. But sometimes you got to have a cooler head do it.
Yeah.
And right now there is no cooler head that can step in and solve this at all, And as you point out, there is no owner. It's a group-wide situation. So the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NBA, now with more and more players getting control, a lot more control than yesteryear, you're seeing this occur more and more often, where the egos become the issue, either with a head coach and a player, or an owner and a head coach, or an owner and a player.
Well, amazing that they were able to make that 20-year run. And
it is.
Just remarkable.
Because when you look at it, Bo, that could have easily fallen apart somewhere along the line.
Sure.
That's a fine line, when there is a little bit of friction between you and the boss.
Yeah.
That could have easily fallen apart. And yet we saw the Breeze Payton run, and there was never that moment.
Oh, look, and I've only got a minute, Mike, but Breeze had every right to be mad as hell at Sean Payton, over getting suspended in the prime of his career, getting suspended. And, this. Peyton kind of lost his way after the Super Bowl and became too much of the big man on campus. And Nola, I get it. Nola had never won it. But for them to get it back together, going 7-9 3 years in a row in Drew's prime is brutal. But Drew stays the course because of kind of the way he's wired. And then, boom, the Saints are right back deep into the playoffs for years. It's truly remarkable. And for Mickey Loomis to not lose his mind with Sean. But Sean's that brilliant. Look what he's doing. He's winning without he's that darn – he's 1A to Belichick, I believe, in the league right now. And if you take out Belichick, I'd take Sean Payton today, even over Harbaugh and Reed. Mike D, you're the best, buddy. We're off for a couple of days next week. So Merry Christmas to you and your family. You're awesome to the show. And we'll hook up again the next week.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Wish everybody Merry Christmas. Be safe out there.
Mike Detillier, at Mike Detillier on Twitter. WWL Radio TV New Orleans joins us at 8:30 throughout the year. One of the best moves we ever made on the show. Grabbing Mike D permanently. And NFL Insight. He's just a great resource for the show. Saints, LSU, NFL. Been covering the NFL since 1985, which was the year Blake was born. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. The show is brought to you by our friends at Sound and Communications. They are the leader, and they provide leading-edge audio and visual for your churches, businesses, and sports facility. Gyms, arenas, baseball, football fields. SoundcomAV.com. We're live in the Bank Plus studio.